It's the segment you wait for at the beginning of each expansion. It's the star ratings. And we're gonna get all the star ratings in this video. We're gonna keep it nice, compact, concise. Let's go. Starting with Demon Hunter, I'll put up the Glaive Shark and Xylag of the Abyss as generally good cards. For this particular expansion, Glaive Shark's getting a 3-star, Xylag is getting a 2-star. In short, I basically don't think that Demon Hunter has any particularly good deck. So even though these are actually quite good cards, I think Demon Hunter will struggle. I know Glaive Shark is a really good card. There's just no good Demon Hunter deck, I believe. You have the Fell Demon Hunter package, Fell and Naga, Multi-Strike Predation and Lady Steno 3 stars, Coil Scar Commander 2 stars. Fell Demon Hunter I think will be a decent deck. Tier 3 is generally the reason why I'm rating these 3 stars. It's a nice fair deck, but the Jace at the end doesn't kill the opponent and it takes a while to get there. And I just feel like it doesn't really do something like ridiculously unfair, unlike some of the other things that we're going to be reviewing. Coil Scar Commander is a card that would be good in some sort of later game deck, Control Demon Hunter. It's still in that Naga spell deck, but I think it might be a little too weak right now. And then we got cards that I don't believe are going to get played in Demon Hunter. Wayward Sage, Abyssal Depths, Shaman Defector, Bone Glaive, all getting 1 star. Wayward Sage is actually notably pretty good if aggro Demon Hunter were going to have a deck at all. And I don't believe that there's going to be a Demon Hunter aggro deck. There's like nothing in particular that makes Demon Hunter really good at aggro in this expansion. And Wayward Sage wants you to have a low cost deck. Abyssal Depths is 4 mana draw 2. I just don't see that happening. A Shaman Defector and Bone Glaive were like the dredge and reward mechanic for Demon Hunter. And while the reward is pretty good, the dredge mechanic of Bone Glaive isn't very good. I will say that there might come a day when Demon Hunter has enough aggro in it that you might want to run the Bone Glaive with the Shaman Defector, and you put the Wayward Sage in that deck as well. You just need a lot more aggro cards. So in conclusion about Demon Hunter, where I see it is that it's going to be a tier 3 class with Fell Demon Hunter. I don't think the cards this expansion gave the current Death Rattle Demon Hunter, which was already not that great a deck, any real tools other than Glaive Shark, which was generally a good card. So, on Demon Hunter. Over on Druid, we start with the generally good card, Aquatic Form. It's a really good card, 5 stars. This is a card that, even though I'm giving it 5 stars, I am going to say that it's overrated. I think it's not all upside. If you put this in a really big cost Druid deck, sometimes you're going to whiff on the Aquatic Form and you certainly won't want to keep it in your opening hand. It really depends on the mana curve. The lower curve you will have, the more Aquatic Form is actually 0 mana tracking. There's a lot of Druid decks that could use that, such as Beast Druid. Speaking of Beast Druid, Bottom Feeder can get up here as a 4-star card. Bottom Feeder and Aquatic Form do work really well together, and Beast Druid does have a low curve. I think Aquatic Form and Bottom Feeder will both fit into that deck. Nice tier 2 deck. Then we've got the big spell Druid cards. You got Dozing Kelp Keeper, Green Thumb Gardener, Miracle Growth, Hedra the Heretic, and Kalak. And I'm going to give all of these cards 2 stars except Miracle Growth, which I'm giving 3 stars. Ramp Druid is currently a deck, and you could certainly build a Ramp Druid deck and push the Spell Druid part of it, and that would work. But you know what actually works right now? Kazaku-san Druid. And Kazaku-san Druid wants your deck to only have dragons in it. And Dozing Kelp Keeper, Green Thumb Gardener, Hedra the Heretic, and Kalak are not dragons. Which version is better? I think Kazaku-san Druid is better. Miracle Growth could fit into that deck, which I think will be a tier 3 deck. That Ramp Druid deck does lose a lot of good cards, such as Overgrowth. And then you've got the rest. Asharan Gardens, Seaweed Strike, and Flipper Friends I'm giving 1 star apiece. Even though Druid has one of the best dredge cards in Aquatic Form, Asharan Gardens just is a really weak base effect. Seaweed Strike, it's because I don't really see a Naga Spell Druid deck working. If you want to play Nagas and spells, there's better classes that do it, basically. And then Flipper Friends is an interesting card where it's a spell, so it doesn't get in the way of Kazaku-san. and it summons a bunch of beasts. So it does do good things for your beast druid. But ultimately, I don't really see the card being that good. Too much mana for Flipper Friends for a beast druid, and not impactful enough for a Kazakhstan druid. In short, Druid gets Aquatic Form, which is an excellent card, and it does get Bottom Feeder, which is actually quite good with Aquatic Form, and I think Beast Druid will be a fine deck. I think Kazakhstan Druid and Guff will continue to be quite popular, and round out like a tier 3 or a tier 2 deck. Now, if you're surprised that the very popular Guff Druid Kazakhstan Druid deck only got like a tier 3 deck, it's kind of because there's some really good stuff upcoming. Hunter comes into this expansion with Quest Hunter, which was already a pretty good deck, but unlike Druid, it doesn't lose a lot of the cards in the rotation. In fact, Hunter actually gains arguably some cards. So first we're gonna put up the cards that I think could fit into Quest Hunter. Got Barbed Nets, Raj Nazjan, Twin Bow Terracoil, and Conscious Call. Gonna give Barbed Nets, Raj Nazjan, and Twin Bow Terracoil a 5-star rating, and Conscious Call a 3-star rating. Basically, I think Quest Hunter is going to be a tier 1 deck. I think it's going to be the burn deck to beat, the one that doesn't have many minions. So you race the Hunter either by attacking it or like by out healing it. Barbed Nets is a really good addition. It's a cheap way to get another Arcane Shot off. And it's better than Arcane Shot, and I think that instead of the Secret package and instead of the Drekthar package, the Naga package, pretty good for Quest Hunter. You slide in Raj Nazja and you throw in Twin Bow Terracoil, and you may or may not include Conscious Call. If there were a Face Hunter deck, I think it would also run Raj Nazjan and Twin Bow Terracoil. I'm not really that confident that there will be a aggro Hunter deck out there because I think there will be better aggro decks coming up very soon. So you've got those cards, and then you have the rest. Urchin Spines, Emergency Maneuvers, Harpoon Gun, Naga's Pride, Asharan Saber, Hydralodon. I'm giving all of these a 1-star. In short, I don't believe a mid-range Hunter deck is good. I don't believe a Face Hunter deck is good. I don't think a Beast Hunter deck is good. I don't think that Naga's Pride is good enough to run even though you have Naga and you have spells. Quest Hunter does look very scary though, and it is probably going to be one of the less interactive decks out there. This will be the oppressive, non-interactive deck of the expansion, and you have to basically kill them by either being aggressive or by out-healing them. Now onto the class that I'm the most bullish on, the Mage. Mage gets 2 packages, both of which are really good. Let's start with the Mech Mage package. Trench Surveyor, Asharan Sweeper, Mecha Shark, Seafloor Gateway, Guide of the Tectonic. 5 stars on every single one of these cards. I think Mech Mage will be a tier 1 deck and will be a very scary aggro tempo deck. And perhaps what's scary about it is not only is it an aggressive deck that plays on curve and puts out scary curvy minions, it also has a backup plan. The backup plan is you play your Seafloor Gateway and then you reduce your hand, which has a lot of mechs in it. Perhaps you discovered more Mecha Sharks. You play all your Mecha Sharks and you play all your mechs off of your Sunken Sweeper, and then you just do a bunch of damage out of hand. So not only is it an aggressive tempo deck, it also has a legitimate plan where you can just do a burst of damage. Guide the Tectonic is also just a really good and strong, powerful card, which if you've got a board of mechs, you just start doing lots of damage. And if you don't have a board of mechs, it's just still really good. But that's not all. The other side of Mage is Naga Mage, which is also really strong. You got Spellcoiler, Gifts of Ashara, Commander Savara, Spitelash Siren. I'm giving all of these 5 stars as well, with a special nod towards Spitelash Siren. In fact, a special nod towards Mecha Shark as well. Those 2 cards really carry their respective archetypes. Spitelash Siren able to give you an enormous amount of mana cheat for a big finisher move, perhaps, of the Spitelash Siren, and then you play a few Nai, you play play a Naga, play a spell, play a Naga, play a spell, play a Naga, play a spell. Some of your spells draw cards, some of your Nagas draw cards, some of your Nagas draw Nagas, some of your spells draw Nagas, some of your Nagas draw spells, such as Savara, and some of your spells are notably really good when you cast a lot of them, and you're casting your proactive spells because your Naga like you to cast spells in a non-reactive way. One notable card that you want to cast a lot of is Wildfire. Wildfire can be discovered by Gifts of Ashara. Wildfire can be repeated by Commander Savara. You could cast so many Wildfire that your hero power will deal like 5 damage each time you use it. It's insane. So yeah, I think you toss the Naga Mage package and the hero power package together into one really insane proactive deck that will kill you surprisingly fast while also offering a lot of control. Which is better between Mech Mage and Naga Mage? I actually don't know. I think they'll both be tier 1 decks. Oh, and then you have Volcanomancy, which is 1 star. Paladin, like Mage, also gets 2 packages. The first package, like Mage, is the Mech package. I am less enthusiastic about the Mech package for Paladin than the Mech package for Mage. We'll start off with the Leviathan, which is not necessarily just fitting into the Mech package. This is an overall good card, which most Paladin decks, maybe all Paladin decks, are going to run. A really efficient bundle of goodness. I'm giving that a 4 star. And even though I'm saying this will make it into all the Paladin decks, which could be Control Paladin, Reno Paladin, Mech Paladin, and I think Paladin isn't necessarily strong enough to warrant giving the Leviathan a 5 star. We got Seafloor Savior, Radar Detector, Shaman, Mooncatcher, and Bubblebot. I'm giving the first 3 stars and Bubblebot 2 stars. So the main weakness of Paladin is, unlike Mage, it does not have Plan B. If Mech Mage loses the board, it can go into a mode where it reduces its cost of cards in hand and then throws them all and then catches up with Mecha Shark, or possibly even burns the opponent to death. Paladin doesn't have that. If Paladin falls behind on the board with a mech, you're not going to have a good time. And Bubble Bot is an example of a card where you want to be ahead on the board to use the Bubble Bot. And they're certainly really strong if you manage to do that, if you get Bubble Bot on the board while you have mechs, but I don't think it's necessarily realistic to expect to have cards on the board. And while Seafloor Savior and Radar Detector and Ashar and Mooncatcher are all really strong cards, Radar Detector notably working really well with Ashar and Mooncatcher, but the problem is, even though there's a lot of value here, it might be too slow when compared with the likes of Mech Mage and Tempo Rogue, Quest Hunter, and stuff like that. Basically, things are moving too fast for you to be able to play a slower value-ish game with your mechs. And there's no like comeback mechanisms. When I said Paladin got 2 packages, I actually meant they got 3 packages. We'll go with the second package now. So the second package is the Control Paladin package. Holy Maki Roll, Immortalized in Stone, and the Garden's Grace. Holy Maki Roll is a tremendously good control card. And if Control Paladin is a good deck, Holy Maki Roll is going to be one of the best cards in that deck. For now, though, I sadly have to give Holy Maki Roll 3 stars because I'm seeing Control Paladin and its variant, Reno Paladin, which could also be a Reno Control Paladin deck. I'm seeing those as tier 3 decks. Immortalized in Stone and the Garden's Grace, I'm giving 1 star on both. I just don't think Immortalized in Stone is a strong enough standalone card, and the Garden's Grace, which gets discounted by Holy Maki Roll and Immortalized in Stone, doesn't really fit a control theme. And while there's murmurings of some sort of OTK with the Garden's Grace, presumably you're using the Cariel hero to buff up your Mr. Smite a bunch, and then play your Smite, and then you play Garden's Grace on it, and like do 30 damage in a single swing. I don't think Holy Paladin should be built that way. I think Holy Paladin just wants to be built as a control deck and slowly win the game with your Cariel buffs. Out-valley the opponent, essentially. And I don't think that plan is that good, which is why I'm giving it a tier 3 rating. Additionally, I think there's going to be some weapon hate, and Cariel is going to get friendly fired. Because people aren't going to be aiming at Cariel, but when you get Vipered and you lose your Cariel weapon, you're going to be really sad. Paladin has some good anti-aggro tools, and it should look to be a pretty strong anti-aggro deck with core set cards being really good heal cards, efficient heal cards, and Holy Maki roll coming along alongside your Pyromancer and your quality and perhaps your city tax. A lot of anti-aggro tools, but can it stand up against stuff that isn't just straight up aggro? And then you got two of the cards that fit the holy theme, kind of alongside the Garden's Grace, Kotori Lightblade and Shimmering Sunfish. I'm giving both of those 1 star. I don't see any particularly compelling reason that you want to run a holy package. Not yet, at least. I think that eventually there will be enough holy cards in Paladin that you'll want to run Lightblade and Sunfish, which are both excellent cards, if there were enough good holy cards. And Holy Maki Roll is a great holy card, and Quality is a great holy card. I think it just about stops there. There's basically not enough, and certainly not enough aggro cards that are holy that you'd run Kotori Lightblade. So Paladin's in an interesting spot, and Paladin is actually one of the decks that I want to build the most, even though I'm calling it like tier 3 at best. This is really early on. Could certainly do better than expected. Paladin notably could be one of the answers to Quest Hunter, because you can heal a lot. Priest! Really interesting stuff that Priest got this set. Definitely the class I'm the most confused about. But we'll start with the Blackwater Behemoth as their Colossus card, and a generally good card. And I'm going to give this a 4-star rating because I think it fits into Reno Priest. Could be a tier 2 deck. I think Reno Priest has a lot of healing. It has some proactive good stuff, and the quest reward of destroy the enemy hero is an inevitable win and is the best control win out there, which means if Priest matches up against any other control or value deck, it should win. That's a big nod towards Quest Priest and Reno Priest. The interesting thing is all these other cards in package number 2, which I'm going to call the Weird Miracle package, could see one-ofs in Reno Priest and could also not see one-ofs in Reno Priest. Handmaiden and Switcheroo, both of which I'm giving 3 stars. But I'm not actually sure that they make it into Reno Priest. Let's put the other part of the Weird Miracle package up. We got Illuminate, Priestess Valish, Serpent Wig, and Queen's Guard. So all 4 of those cards, as well as Handmaiden, reward you for playing a bunch of cards. With the Radiant Elemental that's in the core set, you can play a lot of Serpent Wigs, and then you could play like some Illuminates, which are free, while you've got Lyra out. Maybe you draw some cards, and then you, perhaps with your Handmaiden, and then they're discounted so you can play more spells, get more Lyra spells, play your Valish in order to regenerate a lot of mana, and then play more spells. Now the question is, like, how are you going to win after doing all that? And I could easily see a world where you cast like a ludicrously large amount of spells, especially while you're reducing their cost by Radiant Element. But I'm not entirely sure how you actually win with that, so it's very confusing. The theory could just be like, if you have a good enough miracle and you cast a bunch of spells, you're bound to win, but I'm not entirely sure if you are. So 3 stars on all these weird, miracle-ish package cards. 2-star on Queen's Guard, which Queen's Guard might see play in this miracle deck. And you play a bunch of spells, and then you play your 2 mana, 15, 16 it could be if you cast 13 spells, which I could see happening. Like, this could be a thing. I'm just not entirely sure how it all pieces together. Like, I feel like I've named all the cards that are in the deck. It just baffles me on how the deck is going to be run. And then you've got the Silence package. Whispers of the Deep and Asharan Ritual. They both silence stuff, and you've got some neutral cards that support that package. Stuff you want to silence. Silence Priest, tier 4. Kind of difficult to put together. I'll put 2 stars on Whispers of the Deep and Asharan Ritual. Whispers of the Deep is a notably really good card for Silence Priest. It's like probably the best Silence Priest card that Silence Priest could have ever asked for. What the Silence Priest deck lacks is consistency, because you have to draw your cards that want to be silenced, and you have to draw your cards that silence. And notably, if you draw one without the other, it's really, really bad. Priest is sweet. I'm looking forward to playing Reno Priest, and I'm also looking forward to trying to piece together this Miracle Priest deck. Over to Rogue. This is another deck that I think is an up-and-comer that I think will really influence the meta. And we'll start with the deck that I believe Rogue will get tier 1 with, Pirate Rogue, but notably, I think that Tempo Pirate Rogue is the way to do it. So first off, you got Krakatoa, which is the Colossus for Rogue, and I think that's just a really strong card. It's a 6 mana 6/5 that summons 2 4/1s with Rush, and it gives you a 4/1 weapon, which will then become a 2/1 weapon. We're assuming Krakatoa dies. That's a lot of value for a 6 mana card, and I just think that pretty much all Rogue cards are going to run Krakatoa. So we'll start there. Secondly, you got all the cards that are going to make into Pirate Rogue. The Lay Fighter, Cutlass Courier, Swordfish, Bootstrap Sunken, and Pirate Admiral Hooktusk. Now, the first 3 cards, I'm going to give 5 stars to, but I think that the Pirate Rogue deck is correctly built as a Tempo Rogue, and incorrectly built as a value deck, or, you know, actually putting in the expensive stuff. Bootstrap Sunken, I'm giving probably a really surprising 1-star rating. This particular meta that I'm foreseeing does not have big cards that you want to, like, single target move with the Sunken. And also, I believe that you don't want to run high-cost cards like Sunken in your deck. As well, the Pirate Admiral Hooktusk. I think this is an interesting direction to take your Pirate Rogue, and some people are certainly going to run it. I'm going to give this a 3-star. If we somehow go into like a combo meta, Hooktusk might actually be a pretty decent pick. Related to the Pirate package is the Dredge package. You got a Sharn Vessel and Gone Fishing. The Sharn Vessel seems like it's a fit for the Pirate Rogue, but the Swordfish doesn't get buffed if you find the Sunken Vessel. 2, I think a Sharn Vessel is just too slow, so a Sharn Vessel gets 1 star. Gone Fishing is being compared to Tracking. I don't think I like that comparison, because Gone Fishing can't be played on turn 1. And you might say, wait, Tracking doesn't matter that much if you don't play it on turn 1. I'd make the counter argument that that's a really big deal. If you're playing a tempo deck, you want to spend your mana each turn. Gone Fishing I'm going to give 2 stars, and I secretly think that this is one of the most overrated cards out there. I would have given it a 1 star, but everyone was hyping this card up. Even though Rogue doesn't have that much card draw, Cutlass Courier is there for the Tempo Pirate Rogue. And finally, you got the spell package for Rogue with Swift Scale Trickster and Blood in the Water. And Sharn Vessel is kind of in this package as well. Swift Scale Trickster is actually an insane card. What a powerful effect for 4 mana, and a lot of other classes would love this thing. But Rogue has been purposely designed around the Trickster to not have an insane spell, giving Trickster a 1 star. Sure, you can do the meme, you can live the dream, and you Trickster out your smokescreen and you draw 5, and you play the 4 mana 2/2, which also draws 5. That's pretty sweet, but the Death Rattle Rogue deck is not going to work. Trickster could just be waiting for the right spell to come along, and Blood in the Water is not that spell. Blood in the Water is just a little too weak, I guess. So yeah, expect great things out of Rogue. Tempo Rogue is going to be really scary. And that Swordfish in particular, 3 mana to deal 12 damage over 3 turns, with no real requirement other than like be running the pirates that you wanted to run anyways. That Swordfish card is going to put so much pressure on when you've got 12 damage over 3 turns starting on turn 3, and on top of that, the pirate that you dredged up is even tougher and even scarier. Very spooky. Over in Shaman land, we'll start with Glug the Gulper, the Colossus. Lots of stats, very efficient. I'll give it a 3-star rating. Would certainly go up if there were token-based decks. With the core set having Flame Tongue Totem and Bloodlust, you'd expect that you'd want a token-based deck, or that there would be one around, but I just don't see enough support for that right now. Sadly, I'm not entirely sure Glug the Gulper goes into the actual deck that I see doing well for Shaman. Burn Shaman, the multicaster Shaman deck, which also ran a bunch of Frost cards. It's doing pretty well in the current meta, and I think that it will continue to do well in the new meta. Cards that go into this would be Asharan Scroll, Scalding Geyser, Radiance of Ashara, Coral Keeper, and Wrathspine Enchanter. Now, I tried the Wrathspine Enchanter, and that was too slow. Radiance of Ashara is a cool card, but I don't believe it fits the point of this Burn Shaman deck. So I'm giving Wrathspine Enchanter and Radiance of Ashara 1 star. A Shaman Scroll, on the other hand, did you know that the fire spells that you can discover don't have that many options, so you're going to often get Scalding Geyser, which is really good because you want Scalding Geyser to find your Shaman Scroll. And Scalding Geyser is a great card because it allows your multi-caster to draw an extra card. You don't have very many fire spells in there. It also allows your Coral Keeper to summon an extra 3/3. I think this Burn Shaman deck, it loses a few cards, but adds a Shaman Scroll, Scalding Geyser, and Coral Keeper, all of which I'm rating 4 stars. It'll be a strong deck. Now, what I believe won't be a strong deck is going to be this token stuff that they dumped on Shaman here. You got your Schooling, your Anchored Totem, your Bioluminescence, and your Piranha Poacher. So in theory, Schooling and Piranha Poacher can create a bunch of Piranha, but the problem is these guys only have 1 health, and they've got Rush, so they're meant to like be played and then trade, but then what like actual durable stuff do you have that'll hit the opponent's face with the Bloodlust and the Flame Tongue Totem? I don't see it. It's interesting. The Piranha options and the Anchored Totem is interesting, and the Flame Tongue Totem is interesting. I think the tools are being made for this to be a deck, but I don't believe that's a deck right now. So for now, these are all 1-star cards that will fail, but I think Burn Shaman will be a strong deck. Strong tier 2. Over in Warlock, Warlock got 2 buckets. One's good. One is the worst combination of cards I've ever seen. We'll start with the Murlocs. They got Rock Bottom, Chum Bucket, Void Gill, Shaman Scavenger, Blood Scent Vilefin, and Gigafin. Giving all these just a straight up 4-star across the board. I think that Murloc Warlock will be a tier 2 deck. I think this is a better deck than the Mech Paladin deck. They're actually both kind of similar. They're both trying to use a tribe, buff a bunch of cards, and I just think the Murloc Warlock deck does it better. It gets started faster with Rock Bottom, as well as any number of other cards that you could play in the Warlock class for 1 mana. Murlocs have a few 1 mana cards as well with the Tidehunter. You've got the more powerful, I think, Shaman Scavenger effect. Sunken Scavenger you can get with your Rock Bottom, you can get with Finley, you can get with Blood Scent Vilefin. There's a lot of ways to fetch that up and gives you enormous benefits. Your Void Gill is just a nice filler card. Your Blood Scent Vilefin is just such a strong card. This deck really wants to use all their mana, and you can play a Murloc without spending mana. That's just so strong. Especially if you get Gigafin. That would be quite a high roll, but it does happen. Finally, you have even just 2 Murlocs on the board, and then you play your Chum Bucket, and you're a Warlock. You naturally have Life Tap. You also have the Murloc that draws 3 Murlocs. Like, that's a lot of buffs. So yeah, I think Murloc Warlock will be quite good. Now, that can't be said about the other package of Abyssal Curses. Syracuse Cultist, you have Drag Below, you have Zakula, and you have Abyssal Wave. You know, I could see some benefit to Abyssal Curses. It's definitely an upside. The main downside is your control deck that's trying to kill your opponent with direct damage with the Abyssal Curses. Control decks like having a win condition, but I'm not sure that this is the win condition that Warlock wants, when you could just instead be 1 turn killing them with Owls, or perhaps using the Quest Warlock. Why in the world, out of all the ways that you could kill your opponent, would you choose Abyssal Curses? To do which, you must run like a 3 mana 2/3 minion, a 5 mana 6/5 minion. You have to play a 4 mana card that deals 4 damage when you could be playing your full-blown Evil instead for 3 mana and deal 5. And then you got your Abyssal, which is 6 mana, deal 4 to all. Overcosted minions, overcosted spells in order to pursue a win condition, which is even the best win condition you could have as Warlock. And if you ever want to like mill your opponent with the curses, the sad thing is the second tick of the curse will expire in your opponent's hand and reduce their hand size, and then they can draw their card, as I learned in the theory crafting stream. So do yourself a favor, do not try the Abyssal Curse Warlock. Do give Murloc Warlock a shot. And then you've got Warrior. Warrior has 2 archetypes that benefit the most from these cards as well. We got the Quest Warrior, the Pirate Warrior. And we'll start with the overall good card, Nelly the Great Thresher. 5 stars, great value card, good stats for the cost, and according to Stats Compiled, it gets Mr. Smite out of its 3 card crew just around 50% of the time out of the 3 pirates that you get. So you got a Mr. Smite, you get 2 other cards that cost 1, Mr. Smite himself costs 1. That's a big finisher. I could see Nelly being played in both Pirate Warrior and Control Warrior if you somehow didn't run Kazaku-san. Unfortunately, I do think you run Kazaku-san, which means that Nelly may not see that much play just because Nelly is sadly not a dragon. If you are running the Kazaku-san variant, though, you'll love Guard the City, which I'm giving 4 stars on. Guard the City is a spell, and it is not a minion, which means it doesn't get in the way of Kazaku-san. And Guard the City is just a nice, cheap defensive option. For your Pirate Warrior deck, you have Obsidian Smith, which is a really good 2-mana 3/2 pirate, which will fetch one of your pirates and give it +1/+1. Nice and efficient. And then you've got the rest! 1 star! Fires of Zinashari is a meme. Forged in Flame is not worth it. Get your card draw off the weapon instead of like actually breaking your weapon. The Asharan Trident is too slow for Pirate Warrior. You should just run the 1-mana weapon. It's not good enough for the Control Warrior. From the Depths is too slow, too combo-y, and it's a bad meme with Fires of Zinashari. Lady Ashfane, Blackscale Brute, and Trench Stalker all seem to support some sort of mid-range or heavy Control Warrior, like based off of minion combat at the end, and that is not an archetype that's going to work. But Warrior still does have 2 viable archetypes. The Control Warrior, which may or may not run Kazaku-san, or may choose to run Nelly instead, because maybe think Nelly's better. Could be. And then you've got good old Quest Warrior, which possibly moves a little bit up in the ranking just because while it may get overshadowed by the other tempo decks, such as Tempo Rogue, Quest Hunter, Mech Mage, Naga Mage, it does have an inevitability that the other decks don't have. The Juggernaut just keeps summoning value. So if you go up against enough control decks, which are trying to beat those other decks by out healing them, by out blasting them, the Juggernaut just provides you immense amounts of value, and you can actually beat the control deck that way. With Execute getting moved to 1 mana, with Shield Block coming back, and with Guard the City and Nelly, good control options. The neutral cards of Voyage to the Sunken City are actually a really interesting collection of cards. I believe we have never gotten less filler than this before. Very little filler in the neutrals. So we're just going to quickly go over the ones I did rate 1 star. Piranha Swarmer, that one is actually filler. Pelican Diver, the card doesn't do enough to spend a card on it. Tuskar Trawler, it's a pirate and it's 2-mana 2/3, but yeah, that's just not big enough effect to fit into the Pirate Warrior. Rainbow Glowscale, out of all the Naga, the 2-mana 2/3 with spell damage seemed the least impactful. The Reef Walker, it reminds me of Hog Rancher, which was no good, so I expect this card to also not be good. The Excavation Specialist, similar to the Tuskar Trawler, I don't believe that it's worth it to run cards that have such bad stats to mana ratio just for the dredge effect. Gangplank Diver, which I gotta admit is a risky 1-star card here, because Gangplank Diver does combine with Mr. Smite, where you could play the Gangplank Diver turn ahead and then play Smite and then like actually attack face of the Gangplank Diver along with your Smite and deal lots of damage. I don't actually think that's a good strategy. And then you've got a Sharan Sentinel, which 5-mana 5/6 taunt is not good enough, and then the tools to dredge for aren't strong enough to warrant taking out the Sunken Sentinel out and running a Sharan Sentinel. So after all these 1-star cards, let's get to the 2-star category. Hermit Helmet and Selfish Shellfish, both of which are basically cards that fit into exactly Silence Priest. I'm going to give these both 2 stars, alongside the Silence Priest basically getting a tier 4 rating. You got Naval Mine being a 2-star because it has some potential in that it could replace the Owl in the 1-turn kill deck, Warlock combo deck. But I don't think that's likely, and if it were to happen, it would still not be a very good deck, I think. Slimescale Diver is here because it's a nice card that a lot of control decks might want to consider. And Reno decks definitely will want to consider this. This will be like in the upper 50 cards that you want in your Reno deck for sure, but I'm not entirely sure that there's a spot for it. Ambassador Phelan does put some really good cards onto the bottom of your deck, but out of all the decks that I tried out, I didn't really see a particular deck that wanted to run Phelan. It seems like you want to run Phelan alongside Finley, surely, but I'm not entirely sure if there's any control deck that wants to like just run both, and it's not easy to count on exactly that combination. And there's very few control decks that I think have some natural dredging to them. Of course, if you're running Phelan, you'd want to dredge the Colossus. Any Stormcoil and Mothership both get 2 stars from me. They're both mech cards, but they're both a little bit too heavy, I think. Mech Mage is a little too fast and wants to play a bunch of mechs alongside its Mecha Shark. Yeah, these just cost too much for it. Any Stormcoil would then perhaps think about being fit with Paladin deck, but I think you're going to have a hard time sticking a mech as your Paladin, so you can't count on having an Innie to buff up your mech. You got some interesting cards in Barbaric Sorceress, which is a tech card if you are running exactly a big spell deck, which could be Mage, it could be Druid, and you're up against combo decks. So I don't see this card being very relevant, except the outside chance that we go into a combo meta and we go into a world where big spell decks are good, and then you want to run Barbaric Sorceress to counter the combo decks, which could be interesting. Control decks or big spell decks typically have a natural enemy in combo decks. Barbaric Sorceress could even the scales. And then you got Naga Giant alongside all the other 2-star cards. Not entirely sure there's a good deck that would run it. This is one of those giant cards that's a little bit awkward in that you can't play it early for the 8/8, which is most of the reason that you want to have these giants. And also you can't realistically play it for 0 mana at any reasonable amount of time. Most likely deck that this card goes into is the Spell Druid deck. But again, why would you not just run Kazaku-san? We've got some interesting 3-star cards. I'll start with Murkwater Scribe. Interesting card which could make it into Naga Mage, which I think is going to be a really, really strong deck. And I'm not entirely sure if Murkwater Scribe makes the cut in that deck, essentially. Murkwater Scribe is that really interesting level of power in a neutral where, like, yeah, that's pretty good. It's 2 mana 3/2, good stats, great effect, reduced by 1. It reminds me a lot of that 1 mana 2/2 Mage card, which reduced a spell by 1, the highest cost spell. So if you compare it that way, it's like, on the Scribe. Could also fit into like combo decks, other stuff here and there. I think given the potential of the card, how many different decks it could go into, given the fact that it's a Naga and that Naga likes spells, I think 3 is the right star rating for this. Maybe this sees play somewhere. Baba Naga kind of fits the same thing as well, where it's a 4 mana 4/4 that deals 3. That's pretty good, and I could see a lot of different decks that have a Naga theme thinking about running this card, or Reno decks included. And then you got Smothering Starfish, which is a silence card, great for the Silence Priest, but not just good for Silence Priest, also good if you ever wanted to actually silence your enemy's stuff. Really efficient silence, and it's a tech card if there were stuff that were important to silence. Slithering Dreadscale is going to be one of the weirdest ratings for a card that I think is bad. I think that this card is bad, but I'm giving it 3 stars because I feel like this might be the 7-drop that you put into Priest, Reno Priest specifically. And Reno Priest actively needs 2 7-drops probably. The first 7-drop is pretty easy, use Mutinous. But the second 7-drop, it's basically Slithering Dreadscale or Baron Geddon. There is no alternative. So for that reason, even though I think Slithering Dreadscale is quite slow, it's pretty hard to pull off, it just might be the best 7-drop that you have available to you. Now as we get to the 4-star cards, these are cards that I think are more likely to be run, even though it's still not a guarantee. Crush Claw Enforcer is a card that I think is more likely to be in that Naga Mage deck, but I think it's not a slam dunk guarantee either. Treasure Guard is a Naga that I think could be really interesting in a lot of Naga decks. Also a really good defensive tool in control decks, and also, like, I think practically a shoe-in in a lot of Reno decks. So 4 stars, lots of potential uses for them. And then we got the 2 Murlocs, Twin Fin Twin and Gorlock Ravager. Really strong Murlocs that are naturally going to fit into the Murloc Warlock deck. 4-star on both of those. And then finally, we have a lot of good 5-star neutral cards. We start with Sir Finley Sea God. 5 stars because I think it'll fit into the Murloc Warlock deck. There's even stuff that you want to find at the bottom of your deck. Sir Finley could be your guide for that, and he's even a Murloc. And Reno decks may want to do a big shuffle so that they can find their Reno. If Ambassador Phelan is ever in style, Sir Finley and Phelan are a great combo together. Vicious Slither Spear, excellent card because a 1-mana Naga, which in Mage, Gifts of Ashara required that you played a Naga beforehand, and Vicious Slither Spear is that 1-mana Naga. This is a really cheap and efficient Naga that fits in for an aggressive, proactive style, which is perfect for Naga Mage. As well as perhaps a number of other potentially aggressive decks, such as maybe a Miracle Naga Priest deck. Quick Locker and Security Automaton are both great cards to put into a mech deck. You know, I paused for a moment on great cards because I think Quick Locker is really good, and then Security Automaton is just like, it says mech on it, it rewards playing a bunch of mechs. Boy, do I not like a 2-mana 1/3 stat line, but it could grow a lot. So I will reluctantly put Security Automaton over here at 5 stars. It's probably the weakest one of these 5 stars. And then Sea Scout Operator, kind of similar to Security Automaton. There's some weakness there in that it's not a mech, but it's just so much stats for 3 mana. It's 6/6 worth of stats if you have a mech already. The Click Clocker and Security Automaton, the Sea Scout Operator curve is actually just really strong. 5 stars on all of these. Good package. And instead of Security Automaton, you could play Amalgam of the Deep. Amalgam of the Deep, you could play in any number of decks that are actually, you know, tribal based, and there's a lot here. You got mechs, you got Naga, you got Murlocs, you got dragons. Because a 2-mana 2/3 and get a card that's relevant for your deck is just so good. Oh yeah, pirates as well. I almost missed that. Speaking of pirates, Pufferfist is an excellent pirate. 3-mana 3/4 with a big effect. If there's a bunch of small things out there, you know, some of the Murlocs summon 1/1s, some of the mechs summon 2/2/1s. In the case of the Sea Scout Operator, the Pufferfist could just be a huge swing in your favor. Pufferfist goes into the Pirate Rogue, it goes into the Pirate Warrior, and 3-mana 3/4 strong stat line, and the continuous effect is just quite strong. Stronger the more 1 health minions there are. Blade Master Connie, well, this one's kind of an easy one to rate 5 stars because it's literally being played in tournaments and is in a lot of top decks right now. A card that had 6 health on 4 mana and gained you a +1 card, which also cost your opponent mana. This turns out to be quite good. School Teacher. This is probably one of my favorite cards of the set in that there's so much flexibility. It's such a strong effect, such a variable effect. So many things that the School Teacher can do. But where School Teacher will especially find its power is in giving you a cheap Naga for your Naga Mage. This is a card that will be considered in a lot of decks just due to the strength of the card. And then finally, we round it out with Queen Ashara, a card that's going to be in practically all of the Naga decks, value decks, control decks, spell decks. It's a great Naga, one of the really big characters in the Warcraft lore, and she's being done justice because it's just such a value card when you pay 5 mana 5/5 and you get that choice of treasures, and the treasures are all like very relevant at different times. You can try to kill your opponent, you can summon a big guy, you can get card advantage. Could even be relevant for those combo decks. You cast a big spell, and then you cast another one of that big spell for 1 mana. My queen, So there you have it. I think it's a pretty exciting expansion, and I believe that even though there's going to be some very strong decks right off the bat, which are going to force you on the defensive, because they're really strong in tempo, so I'm expecting like potentially a fast meta, but there's also the control options of Paladin and Priest, Warrior, and perhaps Reno will come and save us from all this aggro. I never go out and like set a star quota for the cards, but this particular set's 1-star cards are actually very low, and there's a whole lot of cards that are like 5-star, 4-star, and 3-star, and 2-star. So I will see you underwater.